Tourette's podcast is not a medical advice show. It's a show about experiences. In the course of that, we may talk about medications or therapies or stories from the doctor's office, but don't mistake any of that for medical advice or direction. It's not. Get that only from people or places licensed or certified to give it, not from a massively fun and action-packed podcast about our life experiences, such as
these conditions create it's like the perfect storm for a creative brain, and the imbalance is the challenge for us to how to function with it.
This is Tourette's podcast, made possible with support of the Tourette Association of America and part of the Geeks Rising Network. Hey, it's Ben. So we're going to get right to the episode this week. I'm in the process of moving, and my internet I don't have internet where I am right now. I'm at my old place. It's getting moved over to the new place, and I'm probably going to upload this episode from a library Wi-Fi signal or something, coffee shop, or anyway. Our guest this week, I don't know, this is a highlight episode for me, I think, because it's all about how Tourette and co-occurring conditions can inform art and how art can help make sense of this stuff. Specifically on this episode, we're talking music with Stephen DiJoseph of Pennsylvania, who I learned about a little while back via a short film called A SynapTic Adventure, Tourettes and Beyond. It's a film he made, and I guess you could call it an art film because it's not straightforward. It's definitely creatively driven, and I say it's not straightforward. I think it kind of is straightforward if you have something like Tourette Syndrome. The film is about how Tourette affects Stephen's creativity. And it has, you'll hear me say this in the conversation coming up, but it has kind of a trippy feel to it. Watching it feels like thoughts and tics and the creative brain just kind of running free. But in a way, again, that makes sense in the context of Tourette syndrome and other things that we commonly live with, like ADHD, OCD, and so on. So it's kind of a trip around the iceberg, above and below the surface, if you know what I mean. And this conversation coming up moves in a similar way to that film, A SynapTic Adventure, where we just have a conversation around art, and it jumps around in a bit in a way that I think suits the spirit of the film. I actually wanted to call this episode of the podcast A Synaptic Adventure, but that would be stealing from Stephen, and I can't do that. But a lot of talk ahead about art and the brain, being rebellious even, in terms of being someone who can do things differently, which you can connect to many a successful person in history. A lot of encouraging stuff here, and there's a lot of history here too, in that Stephen is older than most, I think all of the people we've had on Tourette's podcast this season. He can remember being a kid and seeing the Beatles on TV their first time in the United States and the impact that had on him in terms of really, kind of blowing up his interest in music and creating and knowing that's what he wanted to do. This is a cool talk. And it's timely because November 11th, he's going to be streaming a concert. Again, November 11th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, from a venue in Pennsylvania. I'll have a link to that at tourettespodcast.com. Again, Stephen DiJoseph, our guest today, streaming a concert on November 11th. You can be anywhere with an internet signal and catch the show online. I'll have the link to that at tourettespodcast.com. In addition to his film, A Synaptic Adventure, just very cool to hear from Stephen and how he describes his Tourettic relationship with art and music and creating. Let's go right to it. This is me and musician Stephen DiJoseph.
My name's Stephen DiJoseph. That's spelled with a PH for balance. And DiJoseph is DiJoseph. I'm a musician and a producer and a performer. And I'm in the region of Philadelphia. Though I'm an hour north of Philly in a very beautiful area called New Hope.
Oh, okay. I have a lot of friends who live in the Philly area, just kind of orbiting Philly, mostly in the Lehigh Valley area. That's
yeah, sure, Lehigh. Uh-huh.
Yeah, very cool area.
Yes.
Emmaus, Allentown, Easton, and yeah, very cool.
Oh yeah. Good. Yeah, they've really I'd say Easton takes about 35, 40 minutes to get to from here.
Yeah. Okay. So I would say shout out to my friend, brother JT, John Terleski, who lives in that area. He's a musician himself and does a lot of cool sort of psychedelic kind of music. And
nice.
And I got to say, so you sent me some stuff and, I never know what I'm about to click on. And when I clicked on it, it was a short film featuring music and visuals that you had put together.
Yes.
And it won awards. And I was really keen to see it. Again, didn't know what I was going to click on. And I think from an outsider's perspective, someone might call it, like trippy or something like that. But
Absolutely.
I really quickly related to it just because I felt like it flowed the same way that my brain flows, where, you have a subject and you got to focus, and then it kind of, something kind of washes it over to a new area of focus. And it's just kind of how my brain goes through the day. Was any of that, am I onto something? Was any of that to do with sort of your experience neurologically, or?
100%. Because so the way it developed is that the story I wanted to tell, I want to tell my story about living with Tourette's and being actively creative person in the arts, and so I began from there to explore it, and the concept of referring to it as a synaptic adventure developed through several good friends having conversations about it. One is a sort of a medical person, medical and musician.
Yeah.
And so the whole concept was, this is a synaptic adventure, and everybody has one, and this is mine. So that's why the movie was called A Synaptic Adventure, Tourette's and Beyond. And the Beyond was because as I began to explore Tourette's and the arts and creativity, then I inadvertently fell into inadvertently. I guess that's a word. There's another word I'm looking for, but inevitably, as Mr. Smith would say, inevitably, this was something that was very prevalent in all the spectrum conditions and OCD, ADD, Asperger. There was this creative surge that took place in people's lives, and it didn't matter what field they were in. Mm-hmm. I always thought arts because that's where I'm at. But
yeah,
over time and all these years, I've met many people in many different ways. It's so vast, and as vast as there are people, I guess, that this condition has these conditions create. It's like the perfect storm for a creative brain, and the imbalance is the challenge for us to how to function with it.
Yeah.
And so that's what I wanted to convey in the movie, because to me, there are elements of humor inevitably in these conditions within social structure,
Sure. Yeah.
It's inevitable. Yeah.
Well, so, part of that is also, kind of finding initially that creativity is something that works for you. And with me, I don't even know if I had a eureka moment. It may be, kind of pre-memory for me, where, I've always been I guess early on my creativity was drawing, and then I moved into painting, and then I moved into music was always kind of there. And then photography, and so I know at some point along the way that creativity is my way of things and is really what I need to be doing for a living and so on. But I don't remember if lightning struck at any certain time. Was there anything like that for you? Like, did you have a realization that creativity is going to be a driving force in your life?
Holy shit. Yeah. It was, I talked about, so whenever I present my program, that's one of the main things of when I was 6 years, like the film starts when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
This, two things happened, and it was literally that I on television. So it was the Beatles, they showed up in the US, and for some reason, and I think probably a lot of people were triggered by their creative way and just the things they were doing. Just had a way of grabbing. So that was the moment, I went like, bam, I jumped. I was literally in my grandmother's house, and I jumped up, and I was like, I want to do that. I got to do that. And my parents were like, okay, do what? Change the channel? What do you want to do? It was like, you're a kid. He's a kid in an Italian family. What are you doing? So there I was. And that happened. And at the same time, and within that same year, I manifested noises and jerks and blurts and stuff. Mm-hmm. So it was really almost simultaneous. Weird. It's like a weird kind of thing.
So when the tics kind of set on for you, how did you do you remember having memories of like sort of negotiating with like, what is this? What am I? Because at that age for you, this is sort of, you're older than me. This is early for, anybody hearing about Tourette syndrome in any sort of colloquial sense. So how did that go for you?
Not very easily. It was difficult for everyone. For me, because of the simultaneity of the Tourette's and the creative drive explosion, I call it, it just, like, for me as a kid, it seemed like a package, it was weird. It was weird. It was like it was a 10-year period before I got diagnosed. I was 16 years old when I finally heard the word Tourette syndrome from the neurologist in Philadelphia, very prominent guy at the time. Dr. Schlesinger was his name. And he said, well, okay, well, what you have is Tourette's, I mean, the medical community certainly was aware of it. It's been, 100 years or something by that period of time, the 16 and I can't remember. So I was born in 57. So it was like 70 or 69 or 70, 71.
Yeah.
And so 72. And my parents were like, okay, Tourette's, great. We all know what it's called. Now, I was like, what does it mean, Meanwhile, during the time, it was 10 years, it was a lot of challenges like, why do you make those noises? And what are you doing? And what's going on? And why are you cursing like that? Stop cursing. You're bad, So it's very mixed in with things like, childhood misbehaving, just, being a troublemaker.
Yeah.
Things like that, not controlling yourself, all that stuff. My mom dug into it because my mom was my mom, and they had their roles for sure. My mom was a homemaker and my dad was working. So she loves her kids and she dug into it and I found this doctor. She's, a saint as far as I'm concerned that way. And she's like, she took me to the doctor and she said, what is this? And it's like, finally, So, so really, even though they were upset, they were just doing their best. They didn't know.
Sure. Well, that's interesting because at that time period, so this question has come in sometimes, and I'm going to try to relate it to where we are right here in the conversation. A question comes in sometimes from parents whose kids are newly diagnosed. And so the kid is too young to really understand what's going on. They don't maybe know what Tourette syndrome is. And the parent has asked me, is there any advantage in not letting him know or not letting her know so we don't, sort of cause any like weird insecurities or fumbling in life or anything like that? Even though I think that's not the right way to go. I think, you should disclose. But was there anything at that time period where, because I feel like, sort of nowadays or maybe in the early 2000s or something, when a diagnosis comes about, there may be a sense of panic of like, oh my God, I know what this means for my child and it's not good. There's sort of a, it's almost biased in a way, negatively when, and fears can kind of run away for, what this is and what this means for my child.
Absolutely.
I mean, do you see anything in the time period where you were able to kind of ease into it with maybe, was there a lot of social sort of alarm about Tourette syndrome and what it was, or was it still?
Well, it was obscure for sure. My parents used to talk about a guy they saw in Philadelphia, and they said he had St. Vitus dance.
St. Vitus dance.
Yeah, have you heard that term ever? Yeah. I kind of looked into it once. I forgot who St. Vitus was or why his dance was like Tourette's. Maybe he had Tourette's, the patron saint of Tourette's.
Right.
So I began to think, so for me, I don't want to jump around too much, but what else? I'll try to go back to it. So that there was alarm in that, my mom was protective of me, and it was, let's see, the biggest alarm was when I was 16 and we went to, after hearing the diagnosis, we went to a meeting. And all I remember how obscure it was, because it was like 3 or 4 of us in there, and the other members were like ticking, like one guy was like, oh, wow, he's like, oh, he's like just howling, and then like just like I went in the bathroom, he's like bang bang. I was like, holy shit, like is this where I'm headed? Because he was older, and is this what this means? So it was like freaking me out.
Yeah,
I was like, holy shit, so that was alarming. I had an interest. I think for me, as in a personal way, because I had a lot of talent, and people would be like, wow, you're talented,
Mm-hmm.
So that's always been true for me, and that's always played. Again, I'm very public, obviously, because I'm a performer for the last 45 years. So I'm trying to tie this. Did I answer your question? I don't want to get away.
Yeah, no, I think you did. I mean, about, this just kind of makes me think about creativity and sort of when the moment kind of strikes that, like, this is something that I can kind of go to when maybe I'm having a difficult situation ticking, or even socially, or being misunderstood or something like that. I mean, so how did your creativity evolve? I mean, like, so with me, it was like really crude drawing and painting until I kind of found some skills within the mess, and was able to kind of, maybe move that over into musical expression. And did it sort of evolve in a certain way for you? Was it always music, or?
The way it developed for me was longing to do it. Like, in other words, before I was 6, I was just getting, urges to play. The drums, I suppose, was really the first thing. And I just had a lot of experiences of wanting to play music, and it was like kind of welling up,
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the explosion was when I saw the Beatles. And I was like, oh wow, they were symbolic. So then from there, it was like kind of full throttle, beg the parents for an instrument for a year and a half. So that's what I did. I want a piano. I want something. I want. Like, oh, I can't take it. Give him something already.
Right.
So on my 8th birthday at Christmas, I received the Magnus Air organ. It was called, and I still have it.
Oh, cool.
And actually, I did a video. I made a video with it. A cover song I did. I'll send the link to you. But so I got into that, and that Christmas Eve, they wish they hadn't given it to me early because we got snowed in. I played the damn thing until the wee hours of the morning.
Yeah.
They pulled the plug. So that was it. I mean, I just started messing with it, writing songs on it, doing all kinds of stuff until a few years later, they finally got me a real teacher. So really, as far as the creative development, it was just, I say within all of the things that I do and have done, there was a lot of searching, experimenting, but it was always like full throttle. My parents were like, well, do this as a backup job. I was like, what do you mean?
Right.
So my backup jobs became delivery jobs and anything that would enable me to make some money and then keep doing this, and then finally I got into playing live, and at 13 in a band, and then I went from that band into a wedding band. I made a ton of money as a kid.
Huh.
Really, I was like, it's not nothing left, but like was relatively speaking at the age of, 15 to 17, I was in a wedding band and we'd work every weekend, 2 times a weekend.
Wow.
So it was, so I right away got into that. And then from there, I went to a really amazing teacher because I got into progressive rock and I wanted to learn classical and I got into that. And then I wanted to write. And so it just then I got into a progressive rock band and we were writing. And so it was just continual. It really, and to be completely honest, so I'm 65 now and it's never stopped. Mm-hmm. I for a year I went through a severe depression. That's when things like kind of ground to a halt.
Yeah.
Because of the condition that I was in. But when I came out of that, it was like a bullet out of a gun. It's just, just took off again and continued. But so that's really how it developed for me. It was there was no coaxing, there was no pushing. There were great teachers.
That's cool.
Mentors. Yeah,
that's cool. So it was there for you, and how early on were you writing or making like original creations? I guess what we might call fine art and music.
Well, for me as an 8-year-old, I wasn't Mozart or anything like that in terms of like genius. I had the capacity, and I stood at I guess by the time I reached 11 or 12. My mom couldn't tell the difference between the teacher playing and me, so she fired him and found me. She found me this guy who was a consummate, like, touring world class artist. He was amazing. So,
wow,
Mr. Dan Desiderio, yeah, and Dan helped me get a grasp of both being able to work as a musician and play serious music. So. That was, it's how it developed, I guess. That's how it all kind of.
So the one thing a lot of people say, creators who have Tourette syndrome have, they'll say something like, I'll be ticking and then I'll kind of get in the zone with what I'm doing. And when I'm writing and I get in that flow state of music. And is there anything particular that happens to you when you're playing music? Do your tics kind of take a break, or do they act up? Or, because I've heard that too.
They are definitely engaged in different ways. I kind of look at it as I look at the tics, and I look at Tourette's in general as a river that's flowing that doesn't stop; it just gets redirected.
Right.
And so it's flowing into the whatever you're doing. And I would say that things that are deeply engaging tend to reduce tics, it seems to me.
Yeah.
When you're doing something because sometimes I'll sit there and it's like there's not much, and my tics are stuff is more triggered by the presence of other people, which is like, geez, what do you do? Sit alone all the time,
right?
It's challenging. It can be now, I guess fortunately, being creatively driven, I am alone a lot. But at the same time, I'm with people too a lot. So it all depends. When I'm playing gigs, I tic, and some of my work has been in retirement villages, so there's this guy coming in and he's entertaining us. So I figured what happened gradually as I began to understand my tics and my playing as a package deal and as a creative force. I started to go, a good friend, Serge Nikolic, an amazing guy, a marketer. He's like, well, it's like a superpower. It's like you're using the tics to create this music that's expressing that within you. That's this way, that's what makes it unique. And so I developed this thing called piano poetry. That's how my tics have been translated, if you will, into music. It's piano poetry is the most graphic expression of that.
Sure.
In terms of Tourette's, because it's so visceral, and I got pretty good at the piano. So it's interesting how it's like it's an intrinsic part. It makes it challenging because I view my playing as not perfect, like the kind of players that I listen to, or like Vladimir Horowitz and Keith Jarrett and all the great jazz musicians. They're all amazing, and they're all like their articulations and their abilities were just. I was like, I'll never be able to do that. I would think to myself. Mm-hmm. And what happened was I said, well, then maybe they wouldn't be able to do this. Maybe because my belief is they can probably do anything they want, those guys, but the thing is, like, what I'm doing with this and how it's working and how I'm like, it's kind of like golfing or surfing. You're like, here comes the wave and you're going to do something with it,
Right. Yeah, exactly. I love that being able to kind of churn and translate it into music. I mean, this is something that
or art.
Yeah, or just art in general, or whatever your expression happens to be. That you can kind of feed your Tourette or wherever you want to label it as your set of co-occurring conditions or whatever. You can kind of feed these things into art and into the outcome, and that's really cool because sometimes people want to know the story behind art, and sometimes things maybe I think on the outside can seem so abstract that you kind of wonder if there is a story, and then you hear it, and it's because like sometimes I think it's been looked at in the past that art where it comes from a place of some sort of like pain or quote unquote disorder ends up being the art that has the staying power because it has a sense of sincerity and believability. And to hear you talk about it, I mean it's very similar to how I would kind of go about things, and I've thought about things when I create, when I do photography. I mean I don't think I would do it the same way. I have no way of knowing, but I don't think I would do it the same way without the certain aspects of myself. And I guess in one sense, everybody has their way of adapting. Everybody has their weaknesses and so on. I put weaknesses in quotes, but yeah. It's so neat to hear you talk about that and how, I mean, you just really clearly defined how Tourette syndrome can inform art.
Amen.
The Tourette Association of America is the premier nonprofit working to raise awareness, advance research, and provide ongoing support for those with Tourette syndrome or a tic disorder. With a network of over 130 chapters, support groups, and centers of excellence, the TAA engages with communities across the nation in an effort to provide tools, webinars, workshops, and support for all seeking assistance. As a primary sponsor of Tourette's podcast, the TAA supports authentic conversations showcasing the diverse representation of the Tourette community. To learn more, go to tourette.org. That's TOURETTE.org. The Tourette Association of America. Uncontrollable, unstoppable.
And I had the privilege of working with a woman. She would be, I guess she'd be around your age. I don't know how old you are. I'm assuming
42.
You're around 40?
42.
You're 40s?
Yep.
Okay. So she'd be maybe 38 now or 37. Anyway, she found me online and she has Tourette's. Her name is Sudie Madison.
Okay.
And she created a thing called Band of Artists. And now I don't think she does it anymore, but Band of Artists was a collection of people around demonstrating Tourette's as a dance. And being a dancer and a choreographer and a creative, she is. She got into developing these dances and then got funding to make dances and put on programs. So I got to be in that project for a while, and I played a particular piece that I call Tourette's, which is graphic. It was a physical demonstration of all the aspects of Tourette's in one piece.
Wow.
So I did, so I do this piece. People love it. And it's like, it's kind of got a ragtime blues, weird jazz thing going on that it just, but I demonstrate things like, obsessions and, flirting and off balance things. And it just was the greatest. For me, it just struck me as like, why not just make a piece that shows it all at once? People instead of talking about it. It's like, anyway, I got to do that within the what they had. Intersection Tourette's was the name of the piece.
Okay.
And and so she also liked the idea, refocusing the lens on Tourette's, or through seeing it through this creative manner. So I guess I want to add to this. So we look at it from these, I think there's not enough of people talking about this side of it,
Right.
Because I think we need to. I think holistically speaking, it's like it is a challenge. It is a creative boon. If you want to just stop, when I studied all these different people with OCD, oh my God, there's like this society of OCD in Hollywood, and practically every actor that I could see that I thought of and looked up to was in it. It was in the society of OCD society, and Howard Hughes, Abraham Lincoln was through their process. They determined that he had it. That George Washington. This is this kind of stuff I came across and it's blowing my mind. So Howard Hughes was just featured in a story about what was it? He had OCD. There was some other aspect of it. Well, he was one of the leaders for bisexual people.
Okay.
He came out. I mean, it came out. Just all these various things came out about Howard Hughes in his mind, and it was like, and yet here he is, like one of the most successful humans in terms of, but at his personal level, very difficult.
Yeah. I didn't know how true to life the movie The Aviator was, but I remember watching it, and they worked it in. I mean, they worked in a lot of stuff that just looked like Tourette Syndrome in certain scenes, and that made me want to seek out more. I confess I need to learn more about him, but that's
there's he was I mean, wow. The movie was quite thorough in a lot of ways. Leonardo, who also has OCD, according to what I've studied,
right,
who could fully identify with the character, and I guess so. I think what we're talking about then is the way these things play out in art, or as they inform art, and really, art is an expression of. I think it's just like humans, an expression of the human divine condition.
Right.
It's yeah.
So you mentioned depression as well. Is that something was that just kind of like an episodic thing, or is that something that's been kind of following you through your life, or because that's definitely something I deal with?
Yeah, I'd say through life, yes, because hypersensitivity. I wouldn't say I'm an empath or anything necessarily, but I always pick up feelings, and it's like I'd always think they're me, and as a child, as a teen, as a young adult. And those are the kinds of things that people make people feel isolated, because if they're not informed about how universal that is, I'd say it came to a peak when I was around 40, 43, 44, and that I had been treated for Tourette's when I was 18 using what's called haldolperidol, and it was an awful drug it helped. It was for convulsive situations, I think.
I was on Haldol.
Epilepsy.
Yeah.
Did you take Haldol for a while?
Yeah, I took the haloperidol when I was. That might have been one of the very first medications I was on, and I remember it not being very successful for me in particular.
Mm-hmm. I had my reactions to where I had tardive dyskinesia.
Tardive dyskinesia.
There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. So my neck was pulling, and it was all this weird stuff was happening, and it was like I felt like I was walking around in a dream, and so it didn't work, and I swore medicine off. And then at 43, I met the physician equal of Dr. Mengele.
Oh, really?
Because it was just awful. I mean, I was not treated respectfully. I was not, but this person was supposed to be a Tourette expert. And so anyway, I went into this situation and I began these medications, and I was also in a challenge too in my personal life. So it was a bit of a combination platter, but really the way I was handled was poor. But the essence of it was that I took what was Paxil for a number of months and got more and more depressed and not functioning much, going to gigs and coming home and hiding, then, that the particular doctor kept throwing different things at me, and almost like they were guessing, and it was just like I was like a rodent in a cage, and I was like,
Wow.
So as I got away, fortunately for a good couple of friends, I got away from that situation into someone who understood, a psychiatrist who understood titrating and who understood these the effects of these medications.
Wow.
Psychotropics, is that what? So I was like, okay. They gave me a little Xanax, which was not connected to fentanyl at the time, but it really helped. And I mean, seriously, what took 6-7 months of the struggle was satisfied in 4 days. I shifted, and all it took was somebody who knew what they're doing.
Wow.
And it's sad, I don't know how to crusade for proper treatment of people, but it's a widespread issue in a number of areas in the medical field, in the medical community. People getting misdiagnosed and mistreated, and just.
Yeah.
But so my case was that, and fortunately, I had people who advocated for me, and I got to someone who knew what they were doing, and so that was the most significant, like extensively deep. Like when I use the word depressed anymore after that,
Yeah.
believe me, it is not depression.
Wow.
It's a depressive moment, compared to like 7-8 months of like not really getting out of bed much, and just like, yeah. And it was really so not me, it's like so not. So it was really linked to this medication and the treatment,
Yeah.
But like I said, I do have those depressive aspects, and they're a challenge, but I do find there are different kind of paths that helped me deal with it, help me process it. So, there it is.
Huh. So, were people around you understanding of this? I mean, did you have sort of like a social network of? I say a social network. That sounds like has like a modern context to it. But I mean, did you did you have like a crew of people who kind of knew this about you and were able to kind of help you through it, or?
Yeah. In that time, that 1 year period.
Yeah, or just sort of general as you're trying to maybe explain yourself with something that the general public doesn't necessarily immediately understand.
Yeah, I would say that yes, I did. There were people, good friends at the time. My partner of that time became very helpful to me.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, I had people to help me deal with the weight of that issue.
Yeah.
I would say that whatever causes depression, it probably has the same symptomology. It's still that same similar experience, whether or not it's caused by a condition or an event.
Sure. Yeah.
Events tend to be more like wham bam,
Yeah.
and then people can stay in that place for a long time or not, or whereas something that's always percolating in your life from early on right into adulthood, and, it's there, and it's like, so I think there's kind of two kinds. It seems to me like there's an event happens that something reacts to, and then there's like kind of ongoing, chronic, I guess you call it,
So were the periods of time where you had some difficulty, I mean, did that impact your drive either way with creating?
Yes, I was the only time I played the piano was when I went to a gig. I kept my gigs going,
Yeah.
That was sort of a life preserver, a life raft. I just kept calling, booking, and going to gigs, and it was like it's kind of like interesting. It's like they talk about dendrites and creating dendrites in the brain pathways,
Yeah. Yeah.
And this definitely was the physical manifestation of a dendrite experience, because I would like literally make pathways, like psychologically, to get to my car, to get to the job, go into it, to sit at the piano. Fortunately, I wasn't a speaker, or I wasn't had another career which pushed me out in front of people, but it did. I was on the piano, and it was a career, a job that I was helping people who were in situations,
Right.
older people in nursing homes, and so it gave balance to what was going on in that moment, in that time. I was able to sit at the piano and play it and feel some balance from that. I was grateful for that. So but literally it was like a pathway. And then I'd have to, after I got off of that, I was back into my thing, and I had to, beeline to the car and sit in there for an hour and then get myself to drive. And so it was definitely an interesting, when I look back on it and I analyze it, if you will, to understand what's going on. I was using labels a lot, like I'm a failure, I'm going to die, or well, we all are. But I mean, this is going to happen, that's going to happen, and it's just an interesting thing. And what came out of that for me, Ben, it was that I began to really look at the way I'm, self-talk, and I think self-talk, like I'm going to make another bridge here, because what I found in all of my studies of the Tourette's and the spectrum conditions, and I found what I wanted to find was what was universal about these things, a universal about Tourette's and OCD, that other people who don't have those conditions can relate to, because there's a universal ingredient in all of this. And the universal ingredient was that people all know depression generally. Yeah. They all know challenges. They all know something that seems to interference. So I was like, really, there's a way to talk about this that everybody can understand, relate to it. And so that's why I made the film the way I did. I was like, I wanted the POV. I wanted here's what's happening. There's the one section where I'm like, where's my keys? Where's my car? Where's this? Where's that? Bang, bang, bang. It turns into a rhythm.
Right. Yeah.
It turns into a rhythm because I'm a musician. That's what I do.
Yeah.
And, to everybody's chagrin, I'm sitting at the dinner table and I'm tapping my girlfriend's like, oh, don't you tap? Bang. I'm like, bing, bang, bang. I'm making something. It's like, holy shit, don't you ever stop? So even with that question, don't you ever stop? I created a piano piece for it. It was like, don't you ever stop? No. So it was like, that became a whole thing. And it's like, yep.
No, I say that is so familiar to me with, because I've been a lifelong music guy too. And the way that stuff comes to me is just like that. I'll hear something that has some obscure rhythm to it, and then I'll develop it in my brain. And I'll start clicking beats with my teeth, and that kind of became like somewhat of a tick. And I'll have like a melody in my head that may have come from like a bus driving by, and like, the engine kind of hits a note or something. Like there's always something like that. And I remember, I think it was what was it? The David Byrne, Brian Eno stuff, where they, kind of put together stuff, subway sounds and things like that. And just, like you hear music in things, and it's almost like you can't not. It's such an interesting thing.
We can't not. Yeah. I think, that's why so that very experience, right? So we may know a number of artists ourselves, have talked to people or watched people or listened to interviews. And that's why I thought of Tourette's and beyond, because there are all these elements in, I guess it leads to neurodiversity, because obviously, Tourette's is a specific thing, and and then OCD is a specific thing, and then ADHD and autism, and so, but then they stopped calling Asperger's something, and they gave it a number or something, A800. I can't really remember what they call it now, but I just think I think the nature of humanity is to try to understand. Yeah. To try to, regardless of how much destruction, there's all construction, and it's the same as nature. We think nature's so wonderful, but why do they eat each other?
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Why aren't they all vegetarians if they're so peaceful? So I guess what I'm saying is that that's why I felt like it had to be Tourette's and beyond, because Tourette's to me is like a mouthpiece for humanity. It's like we blurt things that others are thinking,
Yeah.
or we'll express something because we're maybe lopsided in that direction, So, and OCD is like the need to keep things in order is there, but they need extreme, ADHD wants to accomplish 1,000 things and they want it all at once,
Yeah.
Well, I think everybody can identify with that. It's like, it's just that there are those that have it pronounced, like, or diagnosed, or so that's why that's how I got into this whole universal thing about collaborating, discovery, adjusting. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, and this is still driving you to this day. I mean, you have events coming up, right?
Yes, as a matter of fact, November 11th, I'm at. So I'm in Philadelphia area, and it's an area called Glenside, Pennsylvania, and the venue is called The Royal, and I'll be doing. So I have a show. I've been calling my show DiJoseph's SynapTic Adventure. So I share openly about the various aspects of my condition, but in these various stories and these different things that our number of artists will get up and talk about things or whatever they'll talk about, or so it's kind of like there's a bit of a storyline in it with the songs, but it's music. It's all music driven. So I'll be playing guitar, piano, vocals, and percussion, I guess.
Right.
So November 11th. And the good thing about it, Ben, I'll say here, is because not everybody's near Philadelphia. So it's streaming as well. So you can get a streaming ticket easily.
So we can all see it.
Watch it from Alaska. Yeah, I think so.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah, I'm excited about it.
I feel like we've really hit a lot of the talk about creativity and Tourette syndrome kind of in form, and it just it feels appropriate how we've kind of gone about this and how questions have kind of come up and how the answers have gone, and I want to make sure that there wasn't anything that we got away from that you want to talk more about, or if there's something I didn't ask that you think is important to a conversation like this, because there are so many people in this audience who are prolific with art and music, and I mean, you could all kind of categorize it together, but different forms of art, and it's really, really cool to see, and it's really cool to hear people with Tourette syndrome talk about how one thing talks to the other. And
yes, I know we could. We probably could talk more. Another 45 minutes. Yeah. I mean, it's like really just something that I think does open a lot of. It opens a lot for people with these conditions and without them, so to speak.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's one aspect of a human condition, and I think because I personally wanted to connect more with others. I began to wonder about if other people without these conditions, how do they experience things? Are they don't they have aspects of this stuff that maybe is just under control?
Sure.
Because there's not a particular chemical thing going on with them, or the DNA didn't have that aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So I think there's be lots to talk more about, and I probably will. I'm working on a talk program, so and I've done a few. So I guess I would just say maybe I would like to invite people to stay tuned.
Yeah, I'd love to give people the opportunity to see you, and also I'll include a link to your film, and just so they get a better sense of what we're talking about here. But I feel like how we've talked about it, people do kind of get a good idea of
I think so.
What you're creating.
It seems to me. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. Well, this has been so much fun to talk, and you're right. I mean,
Yeah,
we could talk for lengths of time, I'm sure, about music,
yeah.
particular, branches of music. And, um,
Yes.
but I mean, this has been really cool. I guess I'll ask you one more question.
Yeah.
There are a lot of parents who listen to this podcast too. And, some find it when, their child was just diagnosed, or, uh, when they see winks of creativity in their child. I mean, do you have any advice for, just kind of letting that fly and, kind of helping to maximize that and create space for it? Or
Yeah. It's, when I give suggestions to adults, or adults dealing with kids, it's always with a grain of salt, only because so many these situations are, the challenges are, behavioral challenges are come into play, because
Mhm.
even though you might recognize a feeling that the child's having, it's hard to navigate it, So the best advice I give to adults dealing with their kids with these conditions is making sure they can do something on a regular basis that they love, that's constructive.
Mhm.
Like, in other words, it's like social media can be awesome. It can also be debilitating.
Right.
And that really is just depends. It's just like anything, a tire iron can change a tire, or can hurt someone.
Right.
And it really just depends on the application of it, So, I think if kids are really gung ho on the internet and all this stuff, well, there's a ton of kids talking about conditions, like these conditions,
Yeah.
On YouTube. I've so many amazing kids. Like, as a girl, I think, I don't know if she's in Italy or something, Anita.
Oh, Sweet Anita?
Sweet Anita, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, look at this, there she is. And, she's personable, and then she's Tourette's. So then I saw these people talking about their conditions, and I was like, okay, this is like, what a time, That didn't exist 15 years ago,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
so I would say, I would advise them to, one, find out what they're passionate about. That's constructive, reasonably constructive. Maybe not. Maybe don't understand how constructive it is, but allowing them to do the thing they love is very important. And then, obviously, physical exercise,
mhm.
and then, not too much screen time, and then letting them talk about what it is they want to do. Like, really say, what would you like to do with that? Do you ever, you want to play with some other people? You want to be an artist, you want to paint,
Mhm.
So that would be one aspect of advice. And then, they're individuals, and there are always going to be challenges as an individual develops.
Yeah. Well, I like the word constructive because I don't think I always did it right when I was a kid. I mean, I
Sure.
self-isolated a lot, and,
Yes.
and in those times I was enjoying myself because I was doing things I was enjoying, but I probably could have had a better balance of, kind of, getting out and interacting and, participating, I guess. But,
the challenge of it, I guess the challenge of interacting when you have something that's visible, movements or whatever, or that's different. Anything that's different, most kids, well, adults too, but most kids won't go, oh, he's different, but I like him,
yeah.
They'll be like, you're different. What's the matter with you?
Right.
Why are you different? You're not supposed to be different. So, yeah, I understand that isolating, and I guess in my case, I was enjoying it because of the music. But yeah, I mean, and also I guess having weird friends doesn't hurt. Other friends who are also challenged, and
That's where I learned a lot of good stuff, from from my friends who had their own thing going on, and then just finding the confidence that like once I can't remember specifically what it was, but I can remember having the feeling that when I created something for the first time where I was like, whoa, this is like, I'm actually kind of proud of this. Like that's such a feeling that is,
Yes.
Like I would give anything to feel that feeling again for the first time. I mean, that's
right.
like, that's such a feat. And I feel like it changed my personality for the better.
Yes.
Because, my parents did make room for that kind of thing, which I thought was awesome. And I can't thank them enough for that.
Yes, I agree. Yes. Making room making room for their uniqueness, which sounds cliche, but really it's something to examine. Like, uniqueness doesn't have to mean they're like so completely different or better, or it just means like they're saying something without words, you know?
Exactly.
And even in rebellion, I mean, rebellion has a function, you know?
That's true.
Ask Timothy Leary. You know what I mean? Ask, anybody who's even successful, majorly successful. They must have been rebellious at some point, you know?
Right. They did something different.
The challenge of the pressure to fit in is one thing. And then pressure to express yourself. You know, there's an inner pressure. You know, there's an inner pressure that, you know, and then really the most important conflict to resolve is the one inside yourself. Because if you can't resolve that one, you're not going to do it outside, you know.
Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much to Stephen DiJoseph for joining us. One more time, in case you needed to grab a pencil and paper, November 11th, a concert with Stephen DiJoseph. You can catch it on the internet live from a venue in Pennsylvania if you want to see his expression through music real time. The link will be in the show notes with this episode at tourettespodcast.com, where you can find all the past episodes going back to early 2018. We've had such a dynamic roster of guests on Tourette's podcast, which has listeners all around the globe and is supported principally by the Tourette Association of America, online at tourette.org. Remember their gala coming up. All the links you'll need are at tourettespodcast.com. I'd love to hear some reactions to this episode. You know, did you relate to it? Did we talk about creativity in a way that jibes with you and your Tourette? tourettespodcast@gmail.com is my email address. And of course, you can always take it to the Tourette's Podcast discussion group on Facebook, run by the amazing Sophia in the UK. I'm going to find an internet signal and get this episode out for you to listen to, which, well, you just listened to it, and I thank you for that. I'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for listening. This is Ben.